Community-Driven Peace Building. Session 2. Our Shared Humanity. Any global perspective or approach based solely on political or economic considerations is inherently limited and insufficient. We cannot legislate trust, legally mandate maturity, or purchase the habits of the heart that we can learn in healthy families and vibrant communities. History has shown that despite best efforts, political and economic strategies have repeatedly failed to truly resolve identity-based conflicts. This affects the way that nations continue to vie and jockey for their own political, social, or economic benefit, much to the detriment of the global community. This is because nations, like the people that constitute them, have not developed the insight and capacity to move beyond narrow self-interest or perceived self-identity. In short, no one has effectively put forth a moral and spiritual justification for a new dimension of international engagement. With conventional narratives such as power balance, clash of civilizations, realistic conflict theory, etc., dominating our worldview, we have not been able to find any solution to conflicts raging in our world. Conflicts don't reduce by themselves. They are increasing every day. It is quite clear that an alternative narrative is required. Human society, therefore, needs to develop alternative approaches as a way out of this quagmire and align with the truth of oneness of existence embodied in the principle of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, which resonates deeply within India's multicultural and diverse society. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam is a profound Vedantic thought from the Maha Upanishad, an ancient Indian scripture. The phrase Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam comes from a verse in the ancient Hindu scripture Maha Upanishad. Ayam Nijaha Paroveti Ganna Laghu Chet Sam Udarah Charitanam Tu Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, which means, this one is my relative and that one is not. This is the calculation of small-minded people. But for noble-minded people, the whole world itself is a family. It essentially signifies the eternal truth, oneness of the universe, one world, one family, one future. Mahatma Gandhi's ahimsa, that is non-violence, both as a creed and a strategy, is considered an extension of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. It envisions the unity of mankind as one family, which offers a compelling foundation for peace building. The ideals implicit in Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam are universal and hence resonate globally. Along with Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, another moral imperative that further expresses the ethos of compassion and the oneness of all is the Golden Rule. Many cultures have similar ethical frameworks that have served as the underpinning of building inclusive and peaceful societies. These ideals are similarly expressed in the African ethos of Ubuntu, the Indonesian ethic of Pancasila, and the ancient Korean ideal of Hongik Ingan, among others, and encapsulated in the expression that we are all one family under God. While these ideas are articulated in various languages, they ultimately recognize the same ideals, that we as human beings share a common humanity and oneness based on our aspiration to strive towards universal good and harmony. These universal themes and vision statements affirm the self-evident, transcendent truths that define our common humanity, grounded in universal principles that support fundamental rights and the spiritual and moral essence of all people. How are these principles lived each day? How do we expand the boundaries of our sense of belonging, and how do we expand our circle of compassion? Maybe it is already latent within each one of us. The Global Peace Foundation affirms the importance of universally recognized principles and shared values as essential to building social cohesion within nations and the global community. Among these principles are: all people have intrinsic value, dignity, and fundamental rights as endowed by the Creator. Every person has as his or her highest attribute a spiritual and moral essence. Our human nature finds its fullest expression and meaning in relation to others. People develop their innate potential through their choices and actions. Freedom and responsibility are intrinsically linked. When viewed from the ideal that we are all part of one human family, each principle makes an important contribution to the well-being of the whole. While this all may sound too broad or too simple, the realization of shared values and our common humanity is profound and can actually bring perpetrators and victims to sit together at the peace table. When relationships are built based on mutual respect for each person's innate dignity and the beginnings of solid relationships exist, the peace process starts and goes forward. Even lengthy, sustained dialogue and difficult conversations ultimately can build relationships. The work of peace building is not fast. It takes time and commitment. Once a relationship has begun, trust begins to grow. Then the challenging work of negotiation and compromise can begin. Let us look at one of those universal principles. Remember the tragedy of the earthquake in Haiti in 2010 and the days that went by after the worst tremors had ceased? Rescuers from around the world worked tirelessly looking for people, finding many people who had died. Yet, miraculously, on the 8th day of searching, they discovered a little boy still alive in the rubble. Remember this picture. The determination of the rescuers who had labored so mightily for so long was evident. Sweat grazing the dust that lined their faces after their heroic efforts to find another survivor. The little boy's name is Kiki. He was 7 years old, and his smile of joy was as wide as his outstretched arms. We can see the suffering of the past 8 days in his sunken eyes, but his smile is like sunshine. Did anyone ask about his religion, race, or his social status? Did the rescuers from various countries and backgrounds care about any of these differences? That he was alive and well was what mattered. All rejoiced as this story and picture swept the world. People everywhere applauded and even wept with joy. By the 8th day, so many bodies were being found, but not this time. Even some of the rescuers stretched their arms out wide, wanting to embrace the life of this little boy. In moments like these, we all know in the depths of our being that life itself is sacred. We will dig more deeply into all the universal principles in the interactive exercise section of this session. Peace building and social cohesion, the role of spiritual leaders. Highlighting and emphasizing the universal principles and values that all faith and wisdom traditions embrace, and building lasting social cohesion based on these shared ideals are central to GPF's interreligious approach. In a diverse, pluralistic society, we do not need or require unanimity of belief. We need only to acknowledge our shared values and common humanity. While there may be great differences in religious doctrines and liturgies, what is most important is how people live together every day. Basic human values, respect and compassion for all people, honoring the family, living with integrity, are vitally important to people of all faiths and backgrounds. Thus, it is essential that faith leaders stand together and advocate for such time-honored principles and shared values in society at large. Each religion has a duty to its adherents to define its unique path towards God. They establish ecclesiastical structure and nurture their adherents through sacred liturgy, teachings, and holy scriptures. This is the religious focus of all religions. Of course, each religion will have its own unique components, its own doctrinal perspective and articulation of faith. Although differences can lead to religious conflict, such differences are often not the essential cause of conflict. In view of this, unanimity of belief is not the essential solution, and thus not the purview of GPF. There is another important expression of faith that GPF focuses on and brings all who affirm God or transcendent into partnership. The wisdom traditions, in addition to their aforementioned religious focus, have an additional mission as well, what we call a civic focus. Typically, faith traditions have provided the moral underpinnings of societies, as well as the impetus for compassion and service to others. In other words, there is a profession of faith that is purely civil. It is not expressed strictly as religious dogma, but rather as expressions of social conscience and rules of conduct, without which it is impossible to be a good citizen in a civil society. Spiritual leaders from traditions that span continents and centuries have affirmed this civic focus. For example, Swami Vivekananda said, "Which of these would be the more beloved of Shiva? Certainly, he that serves his children. He who wants to serve the father must serve the children first. He who wants to serve Shiva must serve his children, must serve all creatures in this world first." It is said in the Shastra that those who serve the servants of God are his greatest servants. So you will bear this in mind. On the other side of the world, in the USA, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. noted, "But a religion true to its nature must also be concerned about man's social conditions. Religion deals with both earth and heaven, both time and eternity. Religion operates not only on the vertical plane but also on the horizontal. It seeks not only to integrate men with God, but to integrate men with men and each man with himself." These two very different men from very different backgrounds and times demonstrated in their lives and works that to live out one's faith meant to serve the greater good. From these two exceptional spiritual leaders and role models, we can extract lessons for our global community today. To live out our faith requires us to act in ways that put those beliefs into practice. This very simple idea can become a lasting basis for interreligious partnerships. The agreement that a world of peace is comprised of moral and ethical societies. There can be powerful multi-faith cooperation and collaboration based upon a common vision and shared values. Lasting friendships and deep bonds of love and mutual respect can be established through engaging in projects and programs that benefit and inspire personal empowerment and social transformation. What is needed and what is occurring in some pockets of our global society is a shift in our mindset, our consciousness of ourselves and others. Even while we are confronted with war, poverty, and corruption in some corners, in others we have begun to see and build attitudes where differences are honored and celebrated as a source of enrichment and expansion of one's reality and consciousness. We have seen that by discovering a deeper common identity that transcends all lines of division, we can begin to sow the seeds of peace and reconciliation. Let us look at some examples of community-driven peace building based on this methodology.